We come to the end of 2021, somehow, in this crazy timeline that we're all stuck in. So that means it's time to look back at this year on my channel, Good Old Days Gaming. It was probably the most challenging year for me mentally, but the biggest achievement, I think, was the jump to live streaming and some other community involvement that happened this year. But before I begin breaking it all down like I usually do, I think the best way to begin is to remind you about the start of this channel and the original purpose I had in mind. This channel was created in 2017 following the personal choice to get rid of my old channel called Nintendo Billy, which was where I first started doing Let's Plays. I started over with the intent of replaying all of the biggest games that were part of my childhood that I had personal stories to share with you about, or however you would word that. It was kind of meant to be more like an archive of every game box I still physically own, perhaps as one last adventure before closing the door forever and choosing some different kind of life that adults are supposed to choose. But that was 4 years ago. So some of the most iconic games with the best stories and happiest nostalgia have already been uploaded before this year. And this channel would not be anything if early on Majora's Mask Randomizer didn't become my gateway into the recommended feed. In a way, Majora's Mask has been a blessing and a curse ever since. But all of this means 2021 started with most of my personal gaming experiences already covered, forcing me to venture into classics I somehow never played, or brand new games entirely. And while I could cater to only Zelda content, that was never my mission, and I much prefer having variety of content on the channel, whether it stays afloat or sinks horribly. And on that note, 2021 was definitely a roller coaster, probably more so than any other year, but without further ado, let's look back on how I tackled this obscure year. January kicked everything off with an Animal Crossing New Horizons New Year's celebration, which was also a sign-off to that Let's Play from the year prior. It was an easygoing series, but it caught little traction, so in a way it was a relief to let it go. Similarly, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity came to an end in January. A game that was fun a little bit each day for a little dose of Zelda, but not so great as a Let's Play given the stale nature of the gameplay. As usual, after 2 underwhelming efforts, I chose to do another Majora's Mask Randomizer, this one being the 9th one since 2017. At this point, they're all the same to me, so whether it was good or bad washes right over my head. I don't even remember a thing about that seed. But next up in January was a showing of my complete Super World in Mario Maker 2, an effort that took forever to finish, but it did feel really good to build those levels. I think the best ones were kind of in the later worlds that I made. Especially that swamp one, that was pretty cool. And keeping with the mood of that thing, and the lighthearted content, I followed that up with Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3 on both the NES and the Super Nintendo. All of them were great fun, except for Mario 3 on the Super Nintendo All-Stars version. Because in that video, which I regret immensely to this day, I pretty much just ranted the whole time about personal life issues, so it took a real spin from the happiness. But Mario 2, however, is some of the happiest content I put out this year. Both versions. That was amazing. And looking back, it's weird that it took this long to finally do those games. But I think it's because of a lack of practice and a fear of failure, and I also thought that they would be too short to condense into a playlist like I like to do with all my stuff. But they're done now, so yay! Or something. But moving on, the final video in January was one of my increasingly rare but better efforts. 64 plus retro levels with endless replay value. I wrote a script and gathered footage from a bunch of classic games to talk about specific moments that never get old, and I just wish I did things like that more often as opposed to just a standard Let's Play. The trouble is, on the scale of hit and miss, these kind of videos always lean towards miss, so I get defeated and just don't bother doing anything else like it. But now we come to February, which continued with the lighthearted, fun anytime retro content, starting with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, another one I can't believe it took this long to finally do. I did a no Emeralds run, so there's still the possibility of getting all the Chaos Emeralds sometime, but again, that's kind of like, I gotta practice. I suck. And there's Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and all those. But yeah, Sonic 2, finally got around to it. It was a lot of fun. I do love Chemical Plant, man. But following that was Day of the Tentacle Remastered on the PS4. I play the original game at least once every year, and previously I did a no commentary long play of that original. But this one was with commentary, mostly discussing how great of a game it still is, and just the differences of the new designs compared to the original that I'm used to playing every year. And I have heard from at least one of you in the comments that you really loved that series and that my commentary somehow didn't ruin the game. So that's pretty cool to hear. But next up in February was a Patreon poll voted Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 4. I had never played any Crash Bandicoot game, so it was neat to get a 5-day glimpse into something so old, yet new. And of course the door is still open for the other Crash games, which I hear are better than the first. So maybe that'll be a next year thing. Who knows? And finally, February began my longest Let's Play to date, Stardew Valley. This series ran well into May and June, but it was the perfect game I needed at the time and should be a nice playlist to binge. I owe all of my thanks to Blackout on Discord for gifting me this game. It's basically the Harvest Moon 64 I've been missing all these years, and I thank you for that. So now we bleed into March, and Stardew Valley kept on going, but to break it up for variety's sake, I did a co-op playthrough with my best friend Ryan of Gunstar Heroes on the Sega Genesis, or the Mega Drive depending on where you live in the world. This game is awesome, and these co-op moments with Ryan are some of the best times I have personally, and probably the most indicative of the good old days I so desperately wish to recapture in the first place. Next to Kirby Superstar, it may be our best co-op video so far. But then again, there was Turtles in Time the previous year. And Combo Tribes, dude! Combo Tribes. And Turtles in Time. I don't know, dude, they're just a lot of fun. But back in the solo thing in Bill's brain of March, I did Ocarina of Time Randomizer number 6, the obligatory seed. This video is god-awful, absolutely horrible, and so of course, it would somehow be my most viewed video of 2021. The worst thing I've ever done, most viewed, putting my worst face out there for all the world to see and judge. But I was angry and fed up about being locked into Zelda-only content when it's not even my best stuff. And I guess I needed to vent it out. But in an effort to make up for that anger burst, I did my first ever livestream of a 7th Ocarina of Time randomizer. I nearly had a panic attack from the anxiety of being live, and I definitely played worse than usual, but it was at least happier than that previous disaster. It was my first time being live, and I was amazed to see, after what felt like a string of pure defeat, how many of you were still enjoying the videos, and it was neat to interact live with everyone. Plus, the generosity of you guys never ceases to floor me, and it really helps break me out of my negative brain space to see such a positive response. I definitely needed that shake-up at that point of the year. The reminder that real people exist, and it's not just the bad thoughts in my head that I have to turn into commentary somehow. But this brings us to the final Let's Play that happened in March, which is kind of an interesting one. Kaze and the Wild Masks, which the developer specifically sent to me to cover, something that never happens and probably will never happen again. It was a great game, similar to Donkey Kong Country in many ways, but better than the Let's Play was my review video, which I personally think is the best review on this channel. Because a lot of my past reviews I droned on about the music and let samples play on for way too long, but this one, I felt like everything was finally paced as if done by someone who's actually paid to make review videos. I always enjoy doing something that isn't just another Let's Play episode for that very reason. It feels like it could actually be work. You know, if I wasn't just some guy on YouTube running his life into the ground. So now we come to April. The main game of Stardew Valley eventually finished up this month, but it was pretty much the bulk of the content. But I typically work ahead, and I was at this time, so I started recording an old computer strategy game that I enjoy, Cossacks Back to War. But things came up in April and I started working on something else, so I really only released one video of that at this time. Additionally, to vary things up and feel the live interaction of you guys again, I did a live stream of Super Metroid Randomizer, this time with a newly added minimizer setting. Not a custom-made one, but an official minimizer. While of course it was not as interesting to most as Zelda, I think it was more fun than Zelda and still a good time, and it was necessary practice to get comfortable with streaming. So now we jump ahead to May, where I pushed a bunch of other recordings back and instead focused on The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap for exactly 2 reasons. First, May begins with the letter M, and so does the word Minish. It's genius, I know. Second, it's Zelda content, and I continually test to see if they all perform well as videos, or if it really is just the tired randomizers. But Minish Cap was a fun game and good to experience for the first time finally, and the reception was pretty much middle ground like I expected it to be. I liked how in the one episode in the swamp, my microphone picked up thunder. I don't know what episode that was, but that was pretty cool. But as for the game itself, I think I liked the bosses the best. That's what I remember the most. Oh, also too, the 4 swords mechanic was neat to see again, having played A Link to the Past / 4 Swords on the Game Boy Advance at the time. So it was neat to, since, I don't even know, 2004 or something crazy? Seeing that 4 swords mechanic again, that was pretty cool. But for some reason my memory of playing this game is foggy, as if I just rushed it out there and moved on, which probably actually sadly sounds accurate. But later on in May I did another live stream, this time of Battletoads Double Dragon, one of my favorite beat-em-up titles. I beat the game twice that day I was live, but I've since deleted the second playthrough because only the first one was good. And finally in May, I started up the Ginger Island extra content of Stardew Valley to push that series just a little longer. And like I said before, it's the Let's Play with the most episodes on this channel, maybe only beaten out by actual duration by Breath of the Wild. But from what I remember, that was a lot of good casual fun too, just chilling out, farming some things. It was a good game. So now we come to June, where I had some stupid idea once again spawned out of the love for alliteration, and I came up with Survival Summer, once again because both of those words begin with the letter S. More of that genius showing. So the idea was to mostly play survival games, but then the first representations of that don't even fit that genre, so I think I was just off my rocker. Just absolutely bonkers, man. It began with the leftover stuff that I never released in April of Cossacks Back to War and Cossacks 3, those real-time war strategy games that are extremely niche and I never expected anybody to watch in the first place, but they're personal to me, I like them a lot, and they belong in my little personal archive that is this channel. So I did it, and I had fun with it. Whatever happens, who cares? So once those videos got out of the way, I followed up with Worms Armageddon, which remains unfinished to this day. I just really wanted a dose of classic Worms, and that game is the easiest to get working on modern computers due to some recent Steam release. But it's unfinished because the dire need to cover The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap forced me to stop playing it. Like, this is how far ahead I was working on different things. But yeah, then time just got away from me, backed by the notion that nobody probably really wants to watch Worms anyway, so why bother? I tend to talk myself out of stuff like that. It just happens. So I don't know, I might do more Worms Armageddon in the future, just one-off randomness to fill the time. I might not. Who knows? But then finally, at some point in June, the real survival summer thing started with The Long Dark. Over the years, a few people recommended this game to me due to my constant talking about weather and how much I love it, and I was definitely not disappointed. The weather sounds in this game are fantastic, and although the gameplay can be long and boring to watch especially, when you're actually playing it, it's very engrossing. I covered the first 2 story episodes before I started looking at the YouTube view counts and stuff, and then I panicked out of massive failure and moved on to something else. As you do. But I just don't have it in me to abandon my core plans, dude, so I continued with the survival summer idea, this time kicking off Subnautica, which actually makes sense for June because it's summery and stuff. And it's a lot more popular than The Long Dark, so I thought, hey, underwater love, come to me. And I did absolutely love every single waking second of this game, and easily put it in my top 5 recent gaming experiences. It actually felt amazing like how games used to feel when we were little. The trouble, however, is it's not a new game, and many people have already played it for themselves. And once you have played this game, a lot of what makes it so amazing just goes away. And yes, perhaps that's true for every game in existence, but with Subnautica in particular, the effect is so much greater for some reason, because it's all about exploring this unknown world that you've never seen before. And it's amazing, dude. It's all underwater, and I love it. But yeah, I didn't take that into account at the time. I didn't even know that at the time. But looking back now, I understand more of why people might not want to watch it. It's either they've been there, done that already, or they don't want the experience spoiled for themselves, which I fully understand. Plus, it really shouldn't have commentary. The game has a way of sending chills down your neck, and me or anyone else talking over top of that is just asinine. Plus, towards the end of that series, I did get into a negative mindset, which I regret, and probably does ruin some of those later episodes. It just always seems to happen, man. Don't know. But when I'm driving around in a little submersible underwater, and things are going whiz-oo past me, mostly water, it's fantastic. And I think for that, it's not so bad in my little submersible. I want to go back to my little submersible. But on a much happier note in June was maybe one of the best things that ever happened this year in 2021. A live stream of Super Mario Party with 3 Patreon supporters. Even better than a standard live stream with just me talking, this felt more like actual hanging out and playing video games like the true good old days. And it added a much needed social element to the video making experience. Cause man, it's very easy when making videos just sitting here talking to myself and then seeing the dislikes and the negative comments a few days later, just to verbally torture yourself and hate your very existence. So to actually feel the opposite of that and be among people again, it's such a good thing. And I cannot thank the Patreon community enough for continually lifting me up and reminding me of good people and kindness as a whole. So thank you very much to Tom, Rachel and Travis, and Dylan and Ashley for the fun time playing that game. I definitely hope to do more stuff like this in the future too. But then one last thing in June, riding off of that happiness, I did another live stream of Majora's Mask Randomizer number 10, which was much happier than most of the ones since Randomizer number 4. But it did end in the game locking up. Which, yeah, it happens, I guess. And if we're gonna be honest here, I don't think any future randomizer video from me will ever be as enjoyable as the 4th seed, the super lucky one. Or even some of the older ones where the idea of a randomizer was still brand new and exciting for me. Because if we combine them all, man, we're at like 22 or 23, something crazy. And they're merely just filler for me at this point when I don't know what else to do. And I'm being extra careful these days to make sure I do not do a randomizer if my mood is not at a very unusually high point, because I don't want to bring any more negativity into those things. So now we come to July 2021, where I got back to the core element of my content, kicking it off with Mega Man 6 on the NES, finally completing the Legacy Collection playlist I have. That game was a lot of fun too, and I think NES playthroughs, these little one-off videos, whatever they end up being, they're the best casual experiences, man. So now I gotta get Legacy Collection 2 and get on especially Mega Man 9 and 10, I can't wait to play those. But following Mega Man 6 in July was a really cool ROM hack I found of Metroid Zero Mission, where the entire map of Super Metroid was recreated using Zero Mission's props. Being such a massive fan of Super Metroid, I really liked blitzing through that thing and seeing how many creative things the creators came up with. It actually worked pretty surprisingly well, almost 1-for-1 with Super Metroid. But once that was over, my Let's Play of Skyward Sword HD began. I was personally very happy to begin that game, but I was not happy with the reception of the first episode, and episode 4 was especially terrible on my part. I said at the end of all of it that I would redo parts 1 through 5 and delete the old ones, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. In episode 1, some people thought I went into it with the intent on hating on every aspect of it, but that's the complete opposite of the reality. I was very curious to see, for the first time, this major Zelda game that I missed out on. However, my struggle to get good with the motion controls at a very fast pace I think killed all interest by Part 5, even if the series got much better afterward. It's a game that definitely has a pretty lengthy learning curve as far as the controls go, but by the end of that Let's Play, I understood the controls just fine, and I loved them. And the whole experience is just one of many examples this year where playing a game for the first time totally blind for YouTube is probably a bad idea. The game itself, while not my favorite Zelda, was definitely fun to finally experience, and I think it had some of the coolest dungeons that I've ever played. And there were definitely some very happy moments in the Let's Play, such as the Lumpy Pumpkin and Colin side quests, so I don't think it's a bad Let's Play. It might actually be better than my Twilight Princess one in terms of mood. But the first 5 episodes do need to be erased from everyone's minds and redone, I think, which is impossible, but yeah. I'm glad I did most of the recording before any negative comments tainted the experience for me. Because believe it or not, that does happen sometimes. Now we come to August, where I was still working very fast to try to finish Skyward Sword HD, while simultaneously announcing a 2-month hiatus. As my little comments I've been interjecting thus far probably show, I was in dire need of a break from the superficial YouTube life, and I needed real-life interaction. So this bled into September and most of October, where I was in England trying to remember what real life even is. And even though during that time I was supposed to clear my head and come up with a life plan, I still ended up recording some things anyway that I would release in some of the later months. So basically, this fast forwards us to late October, where I released Resident Evil 2 Remake on the Xbox One. Just like when I covered the first Resident Evil remake some other Halloween ago, this one didn't really get too much interest. I had a lot of fun playing it, but I do see why it makes for a bad Let's Play, and it's unlikely I will do any more Resident Evil games in the future as a result. However, if I sort some other life things out to the point that this channel returns to being just a hobby with less effect on my well-being, then anything goes. And this brings us to November, where I started a blind playthrough of Metroid Dread, an entire month after the internet had already played it. I absolutely loved the game and rank it very highly in the series, and I've purposely been holding off on a second playthrough in the event that I may livestream it, or just record it as a video even. To this very day, however, I dread comment notifications on those videos, as a lot of them have been negative, perhaps not understanding that it was my first time ever playing it, or even that all videos were already recorded. Obviously, on the second playthrough, I could beat the game much faster and utilize Samus's arsenal better now that I know the game. But YouTube has the thing where they love to point out your every flaw anyway. So again, I kinda wish I didn't record it blind. But maybe it's a thing I let get to me too much. Like, why do people comment on videos from 5 years ago with remarks as if the next episode is coming out tomorrow and wasn't also released 5 years ago? All in all, Metroid Dread is a fantastic game. I loved every moment of playing that thing. I waited a whole month to play it, and I loved it. It was awesome. But the Let's Play itself, I think, holds a dark lesson for the future, completely separate from how great the game is itself and how happy I was playing it. But like I said, perhaps I latch too heavily onto the negative and am blind to the large amounts of positive that are surrounding that. But once Metroid Dread was finally wrapped up, I released Perfect Dark on the Xbox Live Arcade, which I recorded when I was in England. I loved every second of that and completely milked the excuse to redo an entire second Let's Play of one of my favorite games of all time. I'm actually very sad that there isn't much wiggle room left to do more Perfect Dark videos, as I've done 2 Let's Plays, a long play with no commentary, and 2 reviews. But so it goes, I guess. Gotta move on. So after Perfect Dark, in the vein of mass happiness, the endlessly loving family on Discord presented to me an Ocarina of Time Plandomizer that they personally created for me to livestream. That was also one of the greatest moments of 2021 on this channel. It made randomizers fun for me again, which I don't know if you understand how huge of a thing that is. The community feel to it was a whole different world that made everything so much better. Granted, yes, it's still very hard to fight my own anxiety when I go live like that, but just like real life, everything is better with people. I'm incredibly grateful for how kind the community behind this channel is, and it's these small things that slap me out of the funk that seems to hit me every 2 months or so. So thank you to everybody who was involved in making that Plandomizer, adding custom Gossip Stone messages and everything. That was an awesome time, and we definitely got to do more stuff like that, just for happiness' sake and nothing else. And lastly, in November, I did a super happy Let's Play of Kirby's Adventure on the NES to sort of counter the recent Let's Plays of darker games and restore the optimal mood. That was a very fun few days, man. I believe we talked about Thanksgiving stuff like stuffing. Very good. But once it was all over, I finally released the rest of The Long Dark Story Episode 3, which had been done for like 6 or 7 months, just sitting on my computer, some parts missing commentary. I purposely withheld those videos that long, knowing A, that they'd perform badly, and B, I personally just couldn't think of any post-commentary to add to the parts that needed it. Again, that game's very fun to play, but incredibly hard to do commentary for, and I'm not sure the end result was worth all the trouble. But I do know some of you have really enjoyed it, and for that I'm glad. The whole point was to kind of do a laid-back, mellow, relaxing, just listen to the weather kind of thing. And this brings us finally to December, which kicked off with Zelda 1 and Metroid 1 on the NES, that I still can't believe I never did those games yet either. But again, that delay was largely due to lack of practice and knowledge of the games, as well as thinking they'd be too short to organize into a nice playlist. I wanted to do a bunch of NES games leading up to Christmas for a lighthearted holiday, but again, a lot of regular Nintendo games need practice before you record them, and I kinda ran out of time. Perhaps patience as well, because some of those games are brutal, man. Instead, I made a Patreon poll, of which Subnautica Below Zero won. Just like the first Subnautica game, I loved every single minute of this one, and I think compared to that first game, as far as the Let's Play, my mood overall was consistently happy or just chilled out. I'm not sure at this current moment how the reception's gonna be, but I also don't care. And I hope that anyone who does take interest in it finds it enjoyable. Or relaxing. The composer Ben Prunty of that game did such a phenomenal job. Every single song has some sort of layer that sounds like the Arctic. But yeah, it chills you out. It's just a crazy, incredible experience. And if you haven't played the game, don't watch my Let's Play. Please don't. Play it for yourself. It's something you have to experience. And just like the first one, I think something about these two Subnautica games is just the closest thing to being a kid playing a game again. Maybe I do have a bias towards underwater stuff that I strangely love for whatever reason. But yeah, it's just phenomenally done. The atmosphere. Like, one of the reasons I love Super Metroid so much is the atmosphere that it sets. And Subnautica is just phenomenal. Like, if you turn off all the lights, crank up the TV volume, and you really get submerged like 600 meters down there, and a new track comes on, I'd be surprised if the hair on the back of your neck doesn't stand up in a good way, the ASMR way. So yeah, like I said, I don't even care how the series goes over. It was a relaxing time. I think it was a very good way to end the year. Just chill out, turn the brain off, and just let that music, man. The game has, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just that good. It's something you have to experience, and I hope my commentary in the Let's Play is not intrusive over top of that. I tried not to be. But beyond that, in December, I don't know. I'm doing this in advance, so I don't know. I'm planning on doing a Zelda festive live stream, but I'm having trouble at the moment finding a festive randomizer. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that's the plan. There might be some other little 1s and 2s here and there in December, which maybe next year I'll include that in the recap video. Who knows? But that brings us to the end of 2021 on this channel. Overall, like I said in the beginning, I found this year to be the hardest one for me. But finally making the dive into live streaming was one of the highlights, and especially all the community aspect of those few occasions where things like that happened, they really helped in terms of positivity, and just, yeah, it showed me, I think, the world that making videos is supposed to be, as opposed to, you know, classic YouTube 2006, where you did just talk to yourself and put up the video afterwards. Things have changed since then, and the whole point is to be kind of community focused. So thinking about all of this and everything else, I have a lot to consider going into 2022. And there's a lot of people in my real life that are concerned about my lifestyle as a result of this YouTube stuff. And they make very valid points. I do have to make some serious changes, both in terms of content and just my personal well-being. But I'm still working on what that plan actually is. I think more of that community-focused stuff is a good way to go into the new year, and I believe probably less frequent videos might help me personally better balance my life and keep the positive mood up so there's less of the negative stuff just to get a video out on a specific day or whatever. Because there's always going to be games to play, but whether they should be videos or not is something I need to think more seriously about from now on. And there's still a part of me that wonders if it's worth keeping up the variety that I like, or giving in to just Zelda-only content. Maybe once a month or something, scrapping everything else I've built and figuring out another venture with my life. There's no clear answers, and I don't want to stop making content. I just know that I cannot survive many more years like this one. And I owe all of my thanks to you guys for your unwavering patience and kindness. You've done more than your part, so I think now it's time for me to be better at my part going into 2022. So I wish you all a happy new year, all of my love, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.